Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the Elliott homestead. Here we are, the middle of January. You can see it's not the most beautiful time of year on the homestead, but we haven't had a ton of snow this year, which means that we can kind of still see the ground and still see the gardens. And that's exactly what I want to talk about real fast before we go inside and make some stovetop applesauce, because I briefly mentioned, was it last week's video or the video before, that we're gonna take a year off of the vegetable garden. And I got lots of emails and lots of Instagram comments and lots of YouTube comments about that. So I wanted to clarify just a little bit. Up the hill behind me is our big market garden. And this is where we grow big amounts of our storage crops like potatoes and onion, cabbages, carrots, all of our tomatoes. We didn't know how to garden at all when we started our homestead. Gosh, I guess my first garden was about 17 years ago or 16 years ago. And in that time, we've learned how to grow all kinds of things and really large amounts of them. So much so that we've actually built up a surplus of some of those preserved foods in our root cellar. Underneath our kitchen, which is right to the left of me, we have a root cellar that lives below our kitchen, and that's where we keep our kimchi and sauerkraut and jams and jellies, dried herbs, tomato passadas, tomato jams, all of that. And we have a lot of it. We need to eat through it. We don't just grow this just to grow it. We grow it to consume it. And it would be irresponsible to let this food go to waste that's in our root cellar. So we're gonna focus on eating through the food that's already in our root cellar, partly because we need to do a little root cellar renovation, which of course we'll share with you here on the channel. But in order to do that, we need to get some of that food that we've already stored there out so that we have a little bit more room and space to be able to put in the built-in shelves and put in the floor and patch some of the walls, do some of the work down there that we need to. Today is a day for work, not for baking, and I'd like to thank Wild Grain for sponsoring today's video. This is the first Bake from Frozen subscription box for sourdough breads, artisanal pastries, and even fresh pastas. With Wild Grain, you can build your own box with whatever options suit your needs, customize with your favorite products. My personal favorite is the sourdough bread. Y'all know me, you know how much I love to bake. I love sourdough, but that doesn't always mean I have the time for it. So I keep some of these frozen sourdough loaves in my freezer. I get all the sourdough benefits when I really don't have the time to make it happen. All of Wild Grain's products go from frozen to baked in 25 minutes or less. And as a homemaker, I'm telling you, this is like having an ace up your sleeve. When you buy from Wild Grain, you're supporting small businesses and responsible sourcing all around the country, and you can get $30 off your first box plus free croissants for life by using the link in the description below. Enjoy. I should say as well, we're gonna have a small vegetable patch with just a few things. So we'll have fresh basil and cherry tomatoes and some spring onions. So we'll still have a veggie patch to pull from. We're just not going to grow our huge amounts of storage crops this year. Instead, we're gonna tarp it, kill off some of the morning glory, and give ourselves a little bit of a break because we simply don't need that amount of food this year. We've already have so much to eat through. But that does not mean that the garden content is going to stop, not by a mile, because part of the reason that we also made this decision, besides the food surplus, was so that I could give my attention to some of the other gardens that surround our house. If you remember when we moved in 9 years ago, this was all just grass. And now it is an absolute sanctuary for animals and for birds and for bees. We have so many different varieties of bees. I love this part of the garden. And when the veg is really, really demanding, I don't get to spend as much time in the gardens down here as I would like. And the way that we built our gardens, there's actually food tucked into all of our flower gardens. So right in front of me is a peach tree and currant bush. And we have some kiwi over here. We've got all kinds of different herbs that line the pathway. We've got grapes and fruit trees and a whole herb garden that needs my help. All of these things need to be pruned and need to be fertilized. And you can't quite see it, but I'll take you over here. Behind me where you see this snow, we used to have a flowering pear tree there that got pear blight, and we had to get it cut down. And we all cried, and it was very sad, but this has just been bare, and it still needs to be landscaped. And so instead of giving all of my attention to the vegetables this year, I'm going to give it to the flower gardens that surround the house, the fruit trees, and the herb gardens, and then some to this new landscape area back here, which will be planted with still some more fruiting like hazelnuts and raspberries and some other wonderful things like that. So we are going to be gardening our faces off this year. We're going to be growing all kinds of wonderful food and still harvesting all kinds of wonderful food. It's just going to look slightly different than in years past, which I'm really excited about. I think it's important as humans that we give ourselves a little bit of space. You can only do so much. You're only human. I'm only human. I only have so many hours in the day. And so in order to tend to these things really well, I have to pull that time from somewhere else. So I'm really, really looking forward to this year. Not the least of which is just making sure that we're good stewards of what we've been given. So it is in that vein that I am going to finally get around to taking some of the apples that have been sitting in our root cellar since we harvested them in September, I think. So they're a few months old now, into our applesauce. This is something that I should have done a while ago. Some of the apples have gone bad. That just happens as they sit in storage. So it's time for me to pull those out, give them to the sheep and the chickens. They'll be very happy about that, and turn the rest into kind of a ready-made food that our family can just enjoy, which is stovetop applesauce. The very first food that I ever learned how to preserve was apples. Part of that was because I grew up in the apple capital of the world here in the Pacific Northwest. And every fall, I would get together with my grandpa and we would make canned pears and homemade applesauce for the winter. So not only is it an incredibly nostalgic food, but also just a nostalgic process. There are some of these processes that we learned how to do when our hands were young.
Yep.
Can you do me a favor, please?
Sure.
Can you please take those apples to the sheep? You can give some to the chickens as well. Thank you. You anticipating danger out there?
No, we're sure. Yeah, no swords.
You're gonna hit the apples with your swords?
Yep.
And then give them to the sheep?
Probably.
Or do it in the pasture so that
Yeah.
all the remnants won't end up in the pasture? Okay.
Yeah, let's go.
Alright, somebody grab it.
Grab what?
Got it.
Grab the basket.
Owen.
Nosy dozy.
No, not that one. Those
It's in
are
the
my good apples.
basket.
Can you bring me back that tub as soon as you dump it?
Yeah.
Thank
Your
you.
weapon.
Some of these tasks that we perform day in and day out are muscle memory from times before when we've learned these skills, but lots of them here on the homestead are new. And over the course of the 15 years that we've been living this life, we have had to train our hands how to do them. I'm always amazed at how capable the human body is and the human mind is to take in new information and to acquire new skills. I never want to be the type of person who isn't growing and evolving in some kind of way. But here we are, 15 years into this journey, having built year upon year of all of these skills. So there's something to me very romantic about going back to applesauce, a muscle memory that just exists, that I just have for as long back as I can remember. Doing our vegetable gardens is such a joy, but our fruit trees are equally as wonderful. We've been at our property long enough now to have plum trees, nut trees, apricot trees, apple trees, even some really fun ones like figs and persimmons that are really starting to come into their own. When we planted these trees, they were just little sticks, and we basically said a prayer for them and said, well, hopefully we see a harvest in a few years. And now we are seeing that harvest, and it feels very bountiful. I'm actually really glad that I never got around to preserving these apples in the fall when I originally harvested them, because it means I get to get that wonderful feeling of preserving and bounty right here in the dead of winter. Even though there will be big changes in the garden this year, there's going to be a lot of wonderful returning flavors and friends as well. And I'm so looking forward to the season ahead.